The FBI has arrested a suspect over the leak of classified documents, some of them relating to the war in Ukraine. The 21-year-old member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard is accused of sharing highly sensitive information with members of an online chat group. Their circulation on social media has exposed military secrets from Ukraine and diplomatically embarrassing details of U.S. espionage activities.
Arrested by a team of federal agents. The suspect, an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard, is accused of leaking a tranche of classified documents. Led away from his home in Massachusetts, he'll now face the full weight of U.S. justice.
Today, the Justice Department arrested Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard. FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without incident.
The documents reveal top-secret Pentagon intelligence about both allies and adversaries. But perhaps most concerning for U.S. officials are the classified files about the war in Ukraine. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said his department is launching a review of intelligence access, accountability, and control procedures. But U.S. President Joe Biden, who's currently on a visit to the Republic of Ireland, was keen to play down his worries over the potential fallout.
Are you concerned about the leak? Okay, guys, it's time to go. Let's go. Oh, we got to move.
I'm not concerned about the leakages, and I'm concerned that it happened. But there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
This is the Boston courthouse where the alleged leaker is to appear on Friday. But while the main suspect may be in custody, dozens more documents and their explosive content may yet come to light.
Our security correspondent, Thomas Sparrow, is covering this story for us. Thomas, what can you tell us about the suspect and his activities?
Well, essentially, he was very young and also low-ranking within the National Guard. He's being described as someone who worked as a sort of IT specialist within the intelligence wing of the Massachusetts National Guard. He was also simultaneously, in his private life, if you will, very active in online forums. And it was in one of those online forums, in a forum which is well known within the gaming community, that he allegedly published some of these documents. Now, some of the people who knew him in his private life, who even were with him in these online forums, said that it was probably just a stupid kid's mistake, and that his goal was probably just to inform some of the people in those networks about what was happening in real life. But for US investigators, the picture is a very different one. They're investigating now whether there could be a more turbulent aspect to this suspect. And at the same time, he is going to face charges under the US Espionage Act for what is being described already by US investigators as a deliberate criminal act.
Thomas, this leak is being looked at as the most damaging of its kind in at least a decade. What sort of information has been compromised?
Well, a lot of information has been compromised, from the war in Ukraine to activities in the war in Ukraine in particular, but also US spying activities, both on adversaries and friendly countries. I would say that the key word here when it comes to analysing the fallout, analysing the impact of this, is trust. Now, it's obviously clear that these kind of documents, when they are so sensitive, they're not supposed to be disclosed, they're not supposed to be discussed in the wider public. So that's the reason why, now that they are being discussed, the US government is basically trying to limit the potential damage by talking to allies, by also trying to understand what has to change within the intelligence community so that this doesn't happen again from their standpoint. But you already mentioned previous leaks in previous years, for example, the Snowden leaks a decade ago. And I would say that the fallout compared to the Snowden leaks 10 years ago has been very different, at least if you look at it from the European perspective. Back then, 2013, The fallout here was huge, even in cities like Berlin. Even the German Chancellor back then, Angela Merkel, stressing that spying among friends is unacceptable. Well, we're not seeing this kind of outrage from US allies, at least not publicly. Whether there are discussions privately behind closed doors with the US administration, that's something that we still don't know.
Now, as you mentioned, much of this information pertains to the war in Ukraine, much of the leaked information. The leaked files suggest that Western military forces, we're talking NATO countries involved here, are operating in Ukraine. What are the implications of that, Thomas?
Well, they could be very big, in fact, the implications there, but one direct impact, one immediate impact, if you will, is that it could change the narrative in the war in Ukraine, especially when it comes to the Russian perspective, because they have been saying, they will probably say this again now, that they are not only fighting against Ukraine, that they're also fighting against NATO. So it will be very interesting to see how all this develops and how especially also capitals in the West react to this information that has been published.
Thomas, thank you very much for now. That was our security correspondent, Thomas Sparrow.